Have you ever stopped to think about the energy behind that picture of your grandfather on the shelf? Or the spiritual impact of the frame holding a picture of your mother who's already passed on? We're surrounded by photos of people who are no longer with us, yet we rarely think about the unseen limits and the respect we need when dealing with these powerful visual connections. The spiritual and the material worlds mix in ways we don't always get, and today we're going to dive into a topic that many see as taboo, but one that deeply affects our emotional and spiritual journey. If this topic sparks your curiosity, or if you've ever felt something inexplicable when looking at a photo of someone who has passed, hit that like button now and turn on notifications. Your support helps content like this reach more people looking for understanding. Ancient traditions from many cultures have always shown special care with images of ancestors. From Eastern altars to African rituals and indigenous ceremonies, there's a universal pattern of reverence. Why is it that so many different cultures, with no contact with each other, developed pretty much the same set of practices for handling images of those who have passed? The answer might lie in the observations of sensitives and spiritual scholars who notice that photographs act like real energetic bridges. A picture isn't just paper and ink or pixels on a screen. It carries fragments of the person's energy, creating a subtle channel that can help us process our longing, or, depending on our attitude, even interfere with the natural process of the soul's transition. Think about it. How many times have you felt a strong emotion when looking at a photo? That reaction isn't just psychological. There's a real energetic component that goes beyond what we can touch or see. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet and one of the most documented mediums in modern history, brought some surprising revelations about the impact of photographs in the subtle energy field. In his psychic readings, he explained how images create energetic bonds with the person pictured, acting like vibrational anchors that can stick around even after someone's physical departure. According to Cayce, these images have the potential to keep open communication channels between dimensions, which can be either helpful or harmful, depending on the intention and context. Cayce's theory suggests there's no danger in owning or keeping photos of loved ones who have passed away. The problem comes in how we interact with these images. When we constantly stare at these photos with deep pain, despair, or an inability to accept the loss, we might inadvertently create a magnetic field that traps some of the person's energy from remaining on this plane. It's almost like our ongoing deep sorrow sends a signal, "I'm not letting you go." On the flip side, when we look at these same images with feelings of gratitude, calm love, and acceptance, we create a harmonious field that supports the natural flow of life and death. The photo then turns not into an anchor that holds us down, but into a bridge honoring the connection without disrupting the soul's natural transition. Cayce emphasized that respecting the natural cycles of the soul is key to balance for both those who have passed and those who remain. Cayce's readings also pointed out that photos of deceased people, when handled or exposed in environments with dense or chaotic energy, can attract negative energetic interference. That might explain why many people intuitively feel uncomfortable seeing photos of the departed in bathrooms, for instance, or in places of constant conflict. The energy field around the image, from this perspective, remains sensitive and receptive, soaking up the emotional vibrations of its surroundings. The line between tribute and fixation is much thinner than we think. The psychology behind how we deal with photos of those we've lost says a lot about our internal process. When we look at a loved one's photo, what's the first feeling that comes up? Is it gratitude for the memories, or a deep pain that never seems to heal? The difference between these reactions can decide whether we're establishing a healthy relationship with the visual memory or an unhealthy one. Studies on grief show that our emotional intention acts like an energy director. When we look at a photo of someone we love with feelings of fondness, celebrating the life they lived, and accepting their transition, we create a field of harmony. On the other hand, when we fixate on images with despair, guilt, or anger about their departure, we create a dissonant field that not only harms our emotional health, but, from a spiritual perspective, can even slow down the soul's next step. There have been documented cases of people turning their homes into real sanctuaries, with dozens of photos of the departed in every room, creating an atmosphere of perpetual mourning. Therapists who specialize in loss tell us that this constant visual immersion often prevents someone from moving through the natural stages of grief, keeping them stuck at the moment of loss. The result is a life in pause, as if time froze in the moment of loss, making it hard for both the living and the departed to move on. Our intention also shows up in the way we display these images. There's a noticeable energetic difference between keeping a photo discreetly in a special spot in the house, treated with respect and care, and using the image of the departed in everyday objects like mugs, t-shirts, or phone cases. Overusing or misusing the image can reduce the sacred meaning of the connection, turning something precious into something mundane, or even, worse, an object of curiosity or entertainment. The digital age has deeply changed our relationship with images of those who have gone. What used to be a carefully kept portrait in a family album can now be instantaneously shared with thousands of strangers on social networks. This brings up important questions. When we publicly honor someone who has passed by sharing their image, are we really paying tribute to their memory, or are we inadvertently exposing their essence to various and potentially disruptive energy fields? The phenomenon of virtual tributes deserves special attention. When we post photos of our deceased loved ones on platforms where these images are open to comments, reactions, and shares from strangers, we create an unprecedented energetic exposure. That photo that gets hundreds of reactions, some genuine, some superficial, ends up being bombarded by different emotional frequencies. Many sensitives say that this massive exposure can create a kind of energy noise that interferes with the subtle field connected to the image. Particularly concerning is the trend of sharing photos of someone on their deathbed or during a funeral. The moment of transition is sacred in almost every spiritual tradition. It's a moment of maximum vulnerability for the soul, and exposing this intimate moment may subtly violate the spiritual rights of someone going through the biggest change in existence. The need for social validation through likes and condolence comments often masks our difficulty in processing grief in a private, deep way. Social media algorithms add another dilemma. They don't understand the spiritual meaning behind these images. A photo shared as a tribute might show up among ads, memes, or trivial content, creating a disrespectful context for something that should be treated with reverence. Plus, the permanence of these images online creates an unprecedented situation. Profiles of deceased people remain active, and their photos pop up in memories automatically, often catching families off guard and reopening old wounds. Where we keep photos of our loved ones who have passed directly affects both our home's energy and our emotional process. Displaying these images isn't just about decorating. It's an energetic decision that can either support or hinder our journey of acceptance and transformation. Experts in feng shui and other energy-harmonizing traditions agree there's a subtle geography of grieving that we need to respect. When we choose to store photos in chaotic spots, like cluttered drawers or forgotten boxes in damp attics, we create a field of disorganization that mirrors and amplifies our inner confusion about loss. On the other hand, displaying too many images in every room might create a constant presence of the departed, as if the house turned into a permanent memorial, making it hard for those living to continue with life. The secret is to find a specific, respectful, and harmonious space for these visual connections. Notice how cultures with deep-rooted traditions of respecting ancestors, such as Eastern cultures, often designate a special space in their homes, a small altar or dedicated area, to keep photos of family members who have passed. This space is kept clean, organized, and often refreshed with simple offerings like flowers or incense. This practice not only honors the memory, but also sets aside a proper place for connection, allowing the rest of the home to stay open for the life of the present. The energy of the place where a photo is kept also influences the image's energetic field. Photos kept in high-traffic areas, like busy hallways, or near electronic devices that emit radiation, absorb the hustle and interference of the surroundings. In contrast, images displayed in quiet spaces where you can contemplate respectfully tend to keep a higher energetic quality. That's why so many people instinctively feel that some parts of the house aren't right for keeping photos of people who have passed. The natural process of grief invites us to transform gradually. We move from the acute pain of physical separation to integrating the spiritual presence and the lessons left by those we loved. Photographs can be powerful tools on this journey, but they can also become obstacles when we hold on to them as a substitute for the real person. Recognizing the difference between a healthy connection and an excessive attachment is fundamental for our emotional and spiritual well-being. Signs of an unhealthy attachment to images include behaviors like talking to the photograph every day as if the person were still physically there, repeatedly kissing the photo, carrying it everywhere, feeling anxious when apart from it, or becoming extremely upset if someone else touches or moves the photo. These behaviors signal that the image has stopped being just a representation and has become an emotional anchor that blocks the natural flow of mourning and acceptance. Energetically speaking, this extreme attachment creates a magnetic field that psychics like Edgar Cayce described as cords of attachment, energetic bonds that can hinder the evolution of both the departed and the ones left behind. It's like our refusal to let go creates a tension in life's natural flow. Various spiritual traditions stress the importance of releasing the souls of those who've passed, allowing them to continue their journey free from the emotional bonds that we, often unconsciously, try to keep. Healthy detachment doesn't mean forgetting or lessening our love. On the contrary, it's a higher way of loving, one that respects the natural cycle of existence and transforms a physical presence into a spiritual one. Practices that encourage this balance include conscious rituals when looking at these photos during special moments, like birthdays or significant dates, and then periods when you focus on the present and the living. Gradually, the image stops being a painful substitute for a physical presence and becomes a symbol of gratitude for a connection that transcends time and space. How we incorporate the photos of loved ones into our daily rituals and objects says a lot about our understanding of the line between the material and the spiritual. There's a subtle yet significant difference between practices that sacralize memory and those that trivialize it. In several spiritual traditions, photographs are used in rites of passage, celebrations of life, or moments of connection, all carried out with deep respect and within specific contexts that honor the soul's journey. Today, we see a growing trend of personalizing objects with images of the deceased. T-shirts for tribute events, realistic portrait tattoos, printed photo pillows, keychains, mugs, and countless other items. This practice raises important questions about the limits of using these images. When a face from the past is printed on an everyday item, like a mug that goes in the sink, a t-shirt that gets washed and hung up, or a keychain tossed at the bottom of a bag, we might unintentionally desacralize something that should be kept in a realm of reverence. Mediums and sensitives say that the energy linked to a person's image can respond to how the photo is treated. When the image is printed on objects that are handled without proper care or exposed to unsuitable situations, a kind of energetic dispersion may occur, diluting the strength of the meaningful connection. It's like watering down something precious until it loses its essence, trivializing it through excessive and out-of-context reproduction. On the other hand, there are respectful ways to incorporate images into rituals and special items. Lockets with small photos kept close to the heart, carefully organized and preserved albums, or well-chosen frames for specific spots in the house can all work as points of conscious connection. The key difference lies in the intention, context, and care. When an image is treated as something sacred, regardless of the object it's on, its energetic essence tends to remain intact and elevated, benefiting both the departed and those left behind. Kids and naturally sensitive people often pick up on dimensions that slip past more rational adults. When it comes to photos of people who have passed, these individuals can sense subtle energetic nuances that others miss, making them particularly vulnerable to the vibrational fields of these images. It's not uncommon for children to mention feelings, emotions, or even see things when looking at photos of relatives they never met while alive. Studies on children's perception show that before the age of 7, kids haven't fully developed the mental filters that separate the visible from the invisible, the material from the subtle. For them, a photo isn't just a piece of paper with an image, it's a living, pulsing presence. Sensitives report that children often pick up on the energetic quality linked to photos, reacting differently to images of someone who passed peacefully versus someone who had a traumatic transition, even if they don't know the person's backstory. This natural sensitivity can be both a gift and a challenge. When kids are constantly exposed to many photos of people who have passed, especially in settings filled with heavy, unprocessed grief, they might absorb these frequencies, which could show up as changes in behavior, nightmares, inexplicable fears, or even physical symptoms. It's like their still developing energy system works like a sponge, soaking up the emotional fields associated with the images. That's why ancient traditions always advised some moderation when exposing children to photos of the deceased. It's not about hiding the reality of death, but about respecting the gradual development of their ability to process denser energies. The key is to let them know about their ancestry through photos, but in the right context, with age-appropriate explanations, and preferably tied to positive and inspiring stories about the person in the picture, creating an elevated emotional field around the visual experience. Modern technology has given us possibilities our ancestors never dreamed of. Apps that animate photos of the departed, making them smile, blink, or nod. Artificial intelligence that recreates the voices of loved ones from old recordings, and even virtual avatars that simulate interactions with those who have passed. These technologies raise deep questions about the ethical and spiritual limits of representing the dead visually. When we use technology to bring a photo to life, we're treading in unexplored territory from an energetic and spiritual point of view. Ancient esoteric teachings warn about the dangers of creating simulacra, representations that mimic life without holding the vital essence. These simulacra might work like empty shells that, according to some traditions, become open to energies that don't necessarily represent the true essence of the departed. Psychologically, experts in grief are worried about the impact these technologies can have on the natural process of accepting death. Regularly seeing animated, interactive versions of deceased loved ones might lead to a sort of suspended grief, a state where the finality of death is never fully accepted, keeping an emotional wound open that never quite heals. The illusion of continuing to interact with someone who's passed might offer temporary comfort, but it could also stop the vital redirection of emotional energy toward the people who are still here. What's especially concerning is using these technologies with very young children who might become confused about the limits between life and death, between what's real and what's simulated. For example, if a child interacts regularly with an animated version of a deceased grandparent, it might later complicate their natural understanding of life's cycles, making it harder to handle future losses. These tech tools, as fascinating as they are, invite a deep reflection about our ability to respect the natural boundaries between the visible and the invisible worlds. The real challenge isn't about erasing or hiding photos, it's about transforming our relationship with these images, moving from painful attachment to a calm integration of our loved one's essence into our ongoing journey. That change is like the alchemy of grief, turning the heavy weight of physical absence into the lightness of a spiritual presence. Photographs can be powerful catalysts on this journey when used with awareness, respect, and balance. Various spiritual traditions offer practices for making that transformation. Some suggest simple rituals, like lighting a candle as you look at the photo, creating a mindful moment of connection. Others recommend specific times of the year to honor ancestors through their images, and there are even those that propose having conscious conversations with the photos, not from a place of loss, but from a place of gratitude for the continued connection on a subtler level. Balance comes when we can look at a photo and first feel gratitude for the life shared, rather than pain for the physical separation. That shift is an important sign of inner transformation. When a picture stops being a trigger for suffering and becomes a gateway for celebrating the immortal essence of our loved ones, we complete an important step in healthy grieving. The photo then isn't a painful substitute for a physical presence anymore. It turns into a symbol of the unending connection that runs deeper. This transformation benefits both the living and, from a spiritual perspective, the departed. By letting go of the heavy energy of attachment and pain, we create a lighter field that lets life flow naturally. For us continuing our journey on Earth, and for the essence of those no longer in a physical body. Edgar Cayce and other sensitives explain that this loving release of heavy attachments allows the transitioning soul to continue evolving without being weighed down by the emotional bonds we unconsciously try to keep. We've now come to the crucial point in this exploration of the connection between photos, memory, and the spiritual world. Every tradition of wisdom converges on one main lesson. There aren't absolute rules. There is one fundamental principle that should guide our decisions: conscious intention. It's not so much what we do with the photos, but how we do it, and from which internal state, that determines their impact on us, and possibly on the ongoing journey of those who have passed. Photos of our loved ones who are no longer here aren't just paper and ink or pixels on a screen. They're portals between dimensions, contact points between the visible and the invisible. Like any portal, they can work in different ways. They can pull us back, trapping us in a past that never returns, or they can lift our consciousness, letting us glimpse the eternity of an essence that goes beyond the physical body. Which way they move us depends entirely on our inner attitude. Ask yourself, when I look at a photo of someone I loved who has passed, what do I feel first? Is it a weight in the chest that makes breathing hard, or is it a gentle expansion of gratitude? Does the image drag me down into a spiral of pain, or does it inspire me to live by the values and qualities that person represented? The answers to these questions are like compasses, showing whether our relationship with the photos is helping us grow or keeping us stuck in patterns of suffering. I invite you to try a mindful way of looking at these photos. Consider creating a little personal ritual. Before you look at the image of someone who has passed, take 3 deep breaths to center yourself in the present moment, and then look at the photo from a space of gratitude. See how the experience changes compared to when you're filled with anxiety, pain, or guilt. The same photograph can become either a burden or a blessing, depending on the quality of your presence when you view it. Always remember, we truly honor those we love, not by desperately clinging to their visual memory, but by letting their essence blend into our being, inspiring our daily choices and enriching our ongoing journey. In this way, a photo becomes not a substitute for a presence, but a reminder of the eternal connection that goes beyond time, space, and even physical death. If this content has brought new perspectives to your life, or if you know someone who could benefit from this reflection, feel free to share this video. Leave a comment with your personal experience regarding photos of loved ones. How do you keep them? What rituals have you created? Or what changes have you noticed in your relationship with these images over time? Your story might light the way for many who are navigating similar waters. Subscribe to the channel and hit like for more stories like this. Photos are windows between worlds. The key isn't whether we keep these windows open or closed, but how we consciously navigate between those worlds, honoring both the life that goes on and the journey of those who have moved on in the great spiral of existence. In the end, we discover that a true photograph isn't found on paper or a screen. It's printed on our heart, where the essence of those we love stays alive always, not as a static image, but as a dynamic presence that grows with us every new day.